Patrick.
Hey, Michael J. What's happening?
What's happening is we have way, way more of these Ravnica Allegiance spoilers, and some of them are goofy, some of them are super powerful, and I think there's going to be a good number that actually have meaningful impacts on deck design as well as our hearts.
Oh, yeah, no question. Curious, though, there is a question, I should say, which is where to start.
You want to start with Wilderness Reclamation?
In fact, we already did. It's the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. It's just like, boom, you have your own personal little double ups. As long as you can like play some cards in your turn, then the value of any flash or instance super high. This is kind of like an awakening, right? But way I mean, it's only your lands, but this is like pretty exciting, right?
Well, yeah. So if you play Wilderness Reclamation at 4 mana, right, just any amount of 4 mana, whether you like accelerated it out on turn 2 into turn 3, which I guess you probably wouldn't do that. But you've got 4, then you tap out for it, right? And oftentimes for, let's say a blue deck or a reactive deck, tapping out on 4 is just kind of bad. Like you're opening you're lowering the shields or whatever, and you might get brained. At the very least, you're doing this Wilderness Reclamation, and then you can defend yourself with a counterspell or a fog, and then after turn 4, I mean it's live, right? You can tap out for a Teferi, and then start taking time walks or something crazy.
I mean, it reminds me of sort of Feast and Famine, where you stick it the one time, but you didn't even have to really pay for it, and then you're just cooking.
So, like, if you've got Wilderness Reclamation, right, 4, then let's say next turn 5, you have 5 total lands, you tap out for Teferi, right? So you draw a card with Teferi. So Teferi has an untap 2, and this has untap all, right? Does that become all plus 2? Is that No, it does not.
No, because the 2 untap on your end step.
So does.
Oh, at the beginning of your end step, yeah. Right. You're right. Yeah, I think you do get X plus 2.
So if it's all plus 2, right? If it's 5 plus 2, that's,
no, you're right.
That's 7, right? So you can go like Wilderness Reclamation, Teferi, Nexus of Fate, right? And you're just cooking with gas.
Yeah, great point. Absolutely.
So I think this card is going to be an early darling in terms of people wanting to build decks around it, because I think like it's not, you can't really say a one card engine, because you do need.
Well, no, it is. No, you don't need Teferi. You could just play this by itself, and then you have an engine. It's a personal mana flare, as long as you're playing with instants in your deck.
Yeah, or like just even if it's on your own turn, right? Like you can cast cards that are instants on your own turn that are very expensive, right? Where you can double up having land that was untapped already with the full number of lands that you've got. Just because this card actually goes on a stack, that beginning of your end step trigger.
This card looks very powerful. Compared to Awakening, you're not getting the untapping creatures part, but your opponent doesn't get any of the untapping. It's just one-sided. Awakening was symmetrical, and saw a fair bit of play, even though it was a harder cost than this. This is just one-sided, and you even get it at a more opportune time. Getting it at the beginning of your own end step means you can do some filthy things. Like, for instance, what if you just didn't play a Teferi? What if you just tap all 5 mana, and then you have 10 mana, and you just, expansion explosion for 6?
Or you could expansion explosion for 4 and then leave up 2 and have, something for their turn, right? Like, so I think that you don't have to tap it all just because you have access to it all on your end step, right?
True.
And then the other thing I think that's really powerful about this card is, a lot of those Azorius sorceries, like emergency powers, for example, that if you cast them during your main phase, you can do something extra special with it. I think that those cards get much, much better if you're no longer just lowering shields 100%. Like if you go emergency powers on your own turn, And then instead of just being tapped out for 7 into a situation where you just handed, your opponent, here's the keys to my car, right? Like all my land's tapped. If I get a next turn, it's going to be something spicy because I just drew a ton. Oh, well, actually, I'm just untapping a bunch of land, and I have all the tools in the world to defend myself because, I just drew 7.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see how this card isn't like extremely dangerous.
Yeah,
I mean, this card seems like a ton. This card seems super strong.
I think people are going to want to build Bant engine decks with it, specifically Bant, because Teferi and Fog.
Well, I think the curve you identified of Wild Reclamation into Teferi into Nexus of Fate is actually just an incredible sequence.
Yeah, I think, and then plus you even just get bonuses on being able to fog. I think, even if the kind of inefficient fogs that cost awkward amounts of mana, like you could just Wilderness Reclamation on 4, and then you always have whatever fog you have enough mana for it, or like even a Settle the Wreckage to do your setup turn. Because once your setup turn is completed, if your opponent is a non-blue deck, you pretty much have just got them. Like your engine is so powerful. I think once it's got one turn to it.
Huh. Well, I mean, I could believe it. I'm having trouble believing this card. This card seems crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, with emergency, emergency power still costs 7. Don't get me wrong, and 4 is still a threshold of like.
I'm not even talking emergency powers, man. I'm just talking if you just play with normal cards, like Chemist's Insight and stuff. Like, I think if you just play this card with like instants, this card seems absurd with cards like Settle the Wreckage and Chemist's Insight or Expansion Explosion or anything, just instants. Well, this card seems crazy to me.
I think this card just with
what am I missing?
Chemist's Insight is awesome, right? Because Chemist's Insight becomes quite the engine card, right? You can, it's the thing that's prohibitive about that card is how many forecasting cost card draws you're going to cast over the course of a game. All of a sudden, this just doubles your access to being able to do that while leaving open the options to defend yourself. It's good on that. What do you think about just doing nothing for a few turns, 6 turns or something, and then just dropping this with Electro Dominance and then going to town, right?
I don't know. That sounds way worse than just playing this on turn 4 and then going to town.
Because your Electro Dominance the next turn, what is that, 5, 10? That's
Dude, I don't know. Who cares about Electro Dominance? That's fine. That's a thing you can do. But, man, I'm telling you, I think you just want to get this down early and often. This card seems so messed up.
Yeah, it's a good
prediction. Gabriel Nassif top 8's the next Pro Tour playing Wilderness Reclamation. This is in. I don't know, dude. This is a sort of feast and famine that they can't dodge. Like they can't just kill your guy. They have to. You just get twice the mana. This doesn't even make any sense to me. I don't know why they would make this card.
Well, it's 4. It's targetable. I mean. I guess there are a lot of decks that just can't interact with enchantments at all, right? Like a red deck can't interact with this. Like they have to just kill you.
Well, put me down for a massive buyer. I don't just think this is an early fad. I think this is a potentially format warping card. I mean, I got to think about it more, but I haven't felt this way since seeing the Paradox seeing the Aetherworks Marvel. Like, this is like when you and I were just, looking at Aetherworks Marvel in the spoiler, and it's just like, what? How is that a real card? And sure enough, it gets banned a few months later, right?
Yeah, to me...
I'm telling you, Wilderness Reclamation is not... This is not an okay card. I don't know what the hell is going on. This is like Kaladesh block, What happened to the memo about Kaladesh block? I don't know why this card is, allowed in this new post-Kaladesh era.
To me, on its face, this card is more obviously kind of strong in terms of an enchantment on turn 4 or 4 mana than Experimental Frenzy, and that's not a light statement, right? Because I think very strongly of Experimental Frenzy, but Frenzy you can stall. This if you have anything, you're just
anything
massive value.
Dude, this card doesn't even make sense. Think about this is a Gilded Lotus that costs one less, gives you one more, and then also mana flares you for all the other lands you ever play.
Oh, it's like, yeah, because Gilded Lotus is a kind of card that it gets more and more impact to the game the longer the game goes, right? And which is weird because usually, oftentimes you just win because you have the Gilded Lotus the next turn. But yeah, this is like better than Gilded Lotus the turn that it comes out, and then increasingly better for every additional turn.
And by a lot. Like, Thran Dynamo was an intense card. This card costs the same as Thran Dynamo, gives you colored mana, gives you 4 instead of 3, and then also keeps going. I don't know, dude. This card seems broken to me. This card seems literally broken.
Well,
this is insane.
If there's one thing I can say about this card relative to Thran Dynamo, if you've got multiple Thran Dynamos in play, they're all tapping for mana. This, like, you would get bottlenecked a little bit with multiple Wilderness Reclamations, I think, because it's a little awkward to all those untaps, right? You can't stockpile multiple as much as Thran Dynamo.
You just cast them instants.
Yeah, but you got to do it. Like if you just got like 1 or 2 big cards instead of a bunch of frequent stuff that you can do, you're just not going to get as much value. But that's not.
If you just play Wilderness Reclamation on turn 4,
yeah,
do anything you want on their turn 4 since it didn't cost you anything, and then on your turn 5 play a Wilderness Reclamation. Then you just untap and you just have 11. Why would that be okay? This doesn't even make any sense, man.
The big problem for me is just the time walks, because like those are so convenient to cast with this mana on that schedule, right there. This
is really obvious. Messing me up.
Like just turn 5.
This card doesn't seem close. This doesn't seem close. Okay, well, I mean, I guess we're going to have to... What else in this set is good with Wilderness Reclamation? Because this card seems busted.
Like, even if it's like turn 5, you miss your land drop, your expectation is 8 mana, which is Time Walk plus Spell Pierce, right? Like, that's not bad for doing nothing, for like literal nothing.
Huh. I guess it's just very, very important to play with cards like Mortify, I guess, so that you can like somehow slow down the Turbo Time Walk decks or whatever else people end up doing with this craziness. Like, for instance, I mean, is anybody going to play Regenesis? Probably not, because it's just permanence, but it is interesting being a double regrowth as an instant. Yeah, I don't think so. I think you might as well just, there's other options once you're getting up to that kind of mana.
I mean, I think it's like you said before, you don't have to have just like big boom booms with Wilderness Reclamation. You could just do a frequency of reasonably good cards, right? That's a different way to gain an advantage.
Yeah, like as long as you have some stuff that scales, and I think all the card draw sort of inherently scales, and then there's some X spells you can play. But like,
I mean, it's great with jump starts, right? Like you just cast them, and then like if nothing else happens, you just cast them again. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, fine is an understatement. It's very good.
Well, found a good thing to growth spiral into. Turn 2 growth spiral, turn 3 this.
Oh, well, yeah, that's an understatement. Right? Like, that's really unfair, unfun for the opponent. It's just going to change what's good, right? Like, actually, maybe even if you're anticipating a format with like a ton of spell pierces and stuff, it still might not be enough. Right?
I'm telling you, this card doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why they would do this. I have to be missing something. They wouldn't just make a card this broken. So, like, even if you're just doing, like, fair, normal stuff like Frilled Mystic is unreal, right? Like, if you just go turn 4 or turn 3, I guess, you just play your Reclamation, Wilderness Reclamation, and then you just Frilled Mystic whatever they do. Huh. Yeah, I don't know what. All right, well, I guess there's things that that care about lots of mana are good, I guess. It'll be important to know what kind of cards interact with instants. Man,
it's problematic because there is kind of like a vulnerability spot where you can stop them with a permission spell. But I think after that point, even if you're like a Mortify or some kind of whatever Ixalan's Binding deck that can theoretically interact with enchantment permanents, the decks that are going to play this have probably got some way to weasel out of that, right? They've got like permission of their own,
tons of ways.
So you're kind of in trouble if this hits. That's what I'm saying. Like if you deal with it immediately, as if you don't, and they even if they get that first untap, the turn they cast it, that's the thing that's crazy to me. Right? You tap out for this on. You're right. Growth Spiral on turn 2 into this on turn 3 that's like good night already. They have to have like nothing, and because if they have like any card draw, any engine card, all of a sudden they're going to have access to quite literally twice your resources, right? Like that's the problem.
Huh. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess it's going to be important to have access to cheap instant speed enchantment removal.
At least in sideboard, right? Like,
well, it depends on if you want to win game 1.
Do you think that this is going to let's look ahead at the Pro Tour or something? Do you think this is going to be like this is the hot new thing that people are going to be thinking about playing levels
I don't know.
at the Pro Tour?
I don't know, man. I guess. I mean, keep in mind, I've only seen this card, for a matter of minutes, but this card looks busted to me. Like this card looks so like format defining and warping.
Yeah, I think
I'm suspicious whenever I'm not into the I don't like jumping to such a hyperbolic position. So like I assume that maybe there's I got to be missing something because it's just this card doesn't look believable to me. So I have to be. It seems very likely that I've got to be overestimating it in some capacity because it seems so obviously busted.
I mean, even if there are good foils, that doesn't undo the kind of level 1 power of the card, right? That just means that there's some interplay elsewhere in the format. I do think that this card is unusually strong.
Yeah, that is definitely an understatement. I guess you can. I mean, Demystify and Crushing Canopy are legal. I guess Final Payment and Mortify. Not Final Payment, sorry. I guess Mortify and Invoke the Divine. Naturalize, Status Stature.
Oh, I mean, there's a ton of things that can theoretically...
Sort of, just in green and white.
Yeah, that I don't think is necessarily the issue, right? Because imagine you just didn't play it into a situation where the opponent would be able to interact with you. Like, what if you just, like, waited for them to take their big turn, you just played defensive for a ton of turns, and then, like... What if you wait until you had like 7 mana in play or something and you played it with 3 open so that you're on your first untap, you'd have like, I don't know, a ton of mana to be just, you could immediately time walk or something and have like counter magic open. Like you just wouldn't fall prey to their 1-for-1 at that point. I don't think. Like, and that's not really asking too much.
No, nope. It doesn't. I don't think it is asking too much. So, like, what's the best stuff you can do? I mean, is there any realistic way you're not playing blue in this deck?
I don't think so. I think, like, the Time Walk aspect and the Teferi aspect are just too good. Right? And plus, Growth Spiral is blue-green. And Growth Spiral, to me, seems like the best way to get this out because non-land accelerators don't benefit from it, so you actually want to get lands in play, and Growth Spiral is, I think, the most attractive way to do that.
Yeah, you do.
And it's just like you don't, make like a Llanowar Elf vulnerable to a removal spell, stuff like that. There's just no point.
Would you play Primal Amulet as an alternative Wilderness Reclamation?
I don't think so. I think I'd rather just have like more ways to dig for the enchantment than to play alternatives. Because I think that there's probably, you can just win without it, right? Like, you can still just go to Fairy or go regular Nexuses or Fogs or whatever you're going to do. Like, it's just awesome if you have it, but, you don't necessarily lose if it's not in play.
Yeah, that's true. You don't necessarily need to play white. You could play with just. I mean, like Expansion Explosion is pretty good, right? And like your favorite red X spell, the new one,
Electro Dominance.
Yeah, so like Electro Dominance and Expansion Explosion are some like attractive reasons to play red. And one of the things I like about Electro Dominance is the ability to Electro Dominance on your opponent's turn, like before you even have the Wilderness Reclamation, right? Like being able to just interact, play a game, and then drop the Wilderness Reclamation as part of the Electro Dominance.
Yeah. I think that like the ability to, especially if you're playing against a blue deck, to like maybe present 3 must counters consecutively, especially if you've got some sort of blue your own, to protect one of those spells at the same time, it's, pretty attractive.
Man, I don't even know. It's so weird because like trying to evaluate any of the other cards in this set, it's so skewed. I guess let's take a step back from this for a minute and look at some of the other cards, but it's just so weird in the context of this card. I guess. I mean, what do you think about like, for instance, Guardian Project as an engine? Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card.
I feel like
I guess you have to work. It's so weird to do all this work when you could just not.
Yeah, it's asking so much of you, right? Like you get stuff, but like it's like you get stuff only if you take this particular path through the woods, right? Like if you take any deviation from this, you don't get anything extra. I don't know. I was thinking maybe more like to contrast with Theater of Horrors. This one, 1 black and red enchantment.
Yep.
At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, so this is a big clause on this card, if an opponent lost life this turn, you may play cards exiled with Theater of Horrors. And then it's cool. It has 3 in a red. Theater of Horrors deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Like this card is, it's like a Phyrexian Arena that doesn't hurt you, but has like kind of a mild limitation to it. But it's pretty cool, like because the cards they're not in your hand, right? So they can't be forced to duress or anything like that. But I think this card is similar to Wilderness Reclamation in that it's giving you additional value each turn for a one-time investment. But obviously the amount of value is different. It's possibly 1 additional card per turn and possibly not. Rather than, a ton of mana each turn.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's got the Karn thing going on to a degree where you can like stack up lots of cards and just play the ones that are appropriate in this position. I think that your comparison to Phyrexian Arena is apt. And even though you can't play the cards except in turns where an opponent lost life this turn.
Only on your own turn. Also, you don't get any instance with it. So it's
well, you do get instance with it.
I mean, you can't play them on their turn, though.
Right. You can't play them on your opponent's turn. But like, if you're playing with Theater of Horrors in an aggressive, as long as your Phyrexian Arena deck is aggressive, this card's like way better than Phyrexian Arena. Not taking the damage is a real thing, and being able to just shoot players and planeswalkers is a real thing. And part of it is that you can still play land off of this.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I think this card's excellent.
Yeah, one of the things that's a little non-intuitive about Theater of Horrors is if you have multiples, right? So if you have like 2 Theater of Horrors, then cards that are exiled by 1 are under 1, and then cards that are exiled by another are under another. But the thing is, the opponent losing any life triggers all of the theaters, right? So functionally, it doesn't matter that much, right? But it is it's a little non-intuitive, right?
It matters a little for when they have enchantment removal, that they're actually shutting off half the options.
Yeah, I do like the fact that it can nug somebody if you have 4 open mana, even if it's like not a particularly efficient conversion of mana to damage.
Yeah, but you could do worse. That's not the worst. That's a nice option.
Oh, I would consider playing this card without that option. With the option, it's a lockdown.
Yeah, I think I would definitely consider playing this card without that last option. But I think the last option is gravy. I think this card is definitely an early candidate for a top 5 or top 10 card in the set.
Yeah,
this card's very, very attractive. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with a Wilderness Reclamation deck the same way. So, but
why not? You can at least have something to do with 4 mana every turn and then untap it.
Maybe
not enough. That Wilderness Reclamation, you should be getting paid big. Versus Theater of Horrors is just chipping away one card at a time.
Plus, this card is going to be an excellent card for a Rakdos deck in the sideboard against mid-range or control.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. Do you think it's going to be good enough for, like, modern sideboards or too slow?
Totally. I think it is good enough for some modern main decks. This card looks like a Phyrexian Arena. And I think that I think the fact that it only has single black actually is going to make the cost meaningfully easier in some aggressive red decks. Yeah, I don't know. I think this card is going to see a little bit of modern play.
I wouldn't mind this card rating it.
This card is dope. Yeah, this card is definitely dope. Man. So this set sure is the crazy enchantment set, but what about for creatures, Basilica Bellhaunt, white, black for a 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and you gain 3 life.
Wow, that's a heck of a Ravenous Rat, right? So it's exactly twice the cost of a Ravenous Rat in terms of total mana cost, but you get a much bigger creature, and gaining 3 life is pretty cool. I could see. I don't think this card is like so great in the abstract, but I could see it being on a team that has like a lot of value laden stuff put together, and then it's like a great like offensive rebounder. You know what I mean?
Well, okay. How about this? Compare to Luxodon Hierarch. So Luxodon Hierarch has that weird sack ability and is slightly easier to cast. Now let's set those two aside. If we've got a 4/4 versus Basilica Bellhaunt as a 3/4, Luxodon Hierarch has 1 extra point of power and gains 1 extra life on the way in. And in exchange, Basilica Bellhaunt makes your opponent discard a card. Isn't Basilica Bellhaunt better
than Luxodon Hierarch?
Yeah.
I think it's probably better, but I don't think Luxodon Hierarch would be like a top 10 creature right now, like the way that it was in its own day. Like that card was like whiz-bang number 1 in its block, or at least was thought of that way, even if it wasn't actually. But I think like right now people would play it, but it wouldn't be that exciting as it was back then. I think this card is like, he's like a good old man on the team, but I don't think you just like, I need like a 60th good card to play in my deck that can muster up WWBB. I don't think anybody's going to this guy. In the same way that you just like randomly like, all right, my 60th card, I need kind of an expensive threat, and they just grab the red Riot Dragon. I think like all right, I'm trying to this guy. Yeah, I don't see that with this. Maybe I'm wrong.
When you've got Basilica Bellhaunt, aren't you like against a red deck? Aren't you just talking about a Luxodon Hierarch that also just takes a card out of their hand?
Oh,
how are they ever beating this card?
I mean, this card is really bad for the red deck.
Okay, but now what about against a mid-range? Normally, if you play like a Luxodon Hierarch type against a mid-range deck or control deck, you're like, it's a mediocre threat. It's not nearly as bad as like some Shield Bear type or whatever, but like it's not that good. Whereas Basilica Bellhaunt is actually like, I don't know, that's not the worst Nigel Bolas impression, right? Like it's a 2-for-1. And it's not like it's a trivial thing. It's a 3/4. I don't know, like you're not into this, huh?
Oh, no. I think this is a good card. I just don't think that it's like Maybe
you don't think this is a great card?
Well, I think as a red mage, I would never want to play against it. Yeah, I think it's a murderer of red mages. I think it's like, but it depends. Like, if you let the red decks get to their engines, right? Which if they've got like Experimental Frenzy online, or they've got like a Phoenix in play, I think that they can eventually wash out the advantages of the Bell Hunt, depending on how the top of their deck treats them. And the big red deck, I think, just like plays bigger stuff like Stars and has Arch of Orazca going and flips treasure maps. I think that they like don't like it the turn that it comes out. It could be awkward for them if they don't have an extra land in their hand. But like eventually they go bigger than this. But yeah, I think like if you're playing against like a really aggro deck, one of the things I like about this is it's good with knights. You can play with like both of the black and white knights, and it powers both of them up. So I think like it's a good top of the curve there. So yeah, maybe I'm underrating it initially. It's certainly a card that would be a big problem for a lot of the decks that are competitive in Standard right now. But
do you think Siege Rhino would be a top 10 card in Standard?
Right now?
A top 10 creature? Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I think so.
So compared to Siege Rhino, this card's like 1/1 smaller, and your opponent doesn't lose 3 life. Right? So you are trading a +1/+1 counter and a Lava Spike to make your opponent discard a card.
And Siege Rhino has trample, right?
He does, yeah, definitely. That's true.
I mean, I think that matters.
Yeah, it does. But Basilica Bellhaunt also is 2 colors instead of 3. Like, Basilica Bellhaunt, like, how much is them discarding a card worth?
I mean, it could be enormous. It could be like a lot.
Like, your opponent losing 3 life versus the card is not the worst comparison. But, like, a Siege Rhino that's -1/-1 and doesn't have trample is still a really big game. So, I don't know. Maybe this card's not as good as it looks to be, but it looks pretty good. Don't get me wrong. It's no Wilderness Reclamation. But this card looks really good.
I mean, this card
it seems to me like
small red creatures. Like,
I don't just mean that, though. I think that if you're playing some sort of a black-white deck, a black-white mid-range deck with if you have the Basilica Bellhaunt and Kayla's Wrath and the Eldest Reborn, Basilica Bellhaunt, the discard has extra value when you're going to follow it up with the Eldest Reborn.
Oh, that's a great point. Like, if you make them discard their big threat and then you follow up with the Eldest Reborn, you can, even if you don't make them discard their big threat, now you make them discard their big threat or, sacrifice their big threat with the Eldest Reborn, you're just getting paid back so well.
It just fits so well into that grinding, because I think the first card you make them discard isn't going to be as hurtful to them as the second one you make them discard.
Yeah.
And then
are there just regular kind of ravenous rats in the format? I guess there's
there's burglar rats.
And freebooters, and
yeah, I don't think you're going to want the freebooter, though. I don't think you want him to be able to get out of it. Maybe you do, but I don't think so. I would guess not, because that's going to want to protect their good card. But if you're just playing like some sort of a grinding black-white mid-rangey deck, I mean, Ethereal Absolution is, like we talked about last week, is like an excellent continuation of that big sort of Orzhov strategy.
My problem with this is in straight Orzhov versus decks that have some sort of a mana engine am I expected to go like, probably nothing good on turn 1, maybe a removal spell, maybe nothing, but like, decent turn 2 creature that, just doesn't concede the floor. If I go History Benali on turn 3, that's pretty strong. Basilica Bellhaunt, Eldest Reborn, Ethereal Absolution. I'm supposed to have just drawn 6 straight lands. That's the only thing that I'm just kind of versus in an Abzan deck. I can kind of, first of all, get your Ethereal Absolution online faster than turn 6, and I have a higher likelihood of hitting that 6th land than just drawing it off the top of my deck.
Well, I kind of picture you're going to play a lot of treasure map action in this deck.
Okay. All right.
I think treasure map is like a natural fit for decks like this.
I'm in then. I love Treasure Map.
I think it works real well. I think you got to have some draw smoothing, and you got to have some ability to play early on. You can't just rely on drawing all the right cards in the right order. Oh
yeah, I mean, once we're talking Treasure Map, I think you're right that all these things become totally plausible. I mean, if nothing,
Karn also. I think Karn is like a solid draw engine for a deck like this.
Yeah,
you can only play so many 4s, but
Karn is a good card. I don't know. Despite being made of metal, he's a lost little shine for me.
Man. So one of the issues I keep running into with these black-white decks is whether to, like, if you just play with like the creatures and stuff like that, I'm not even sure you're getting all that big of an advantage. But like, I think that there's some real work you got to do in order to figure out how to actually Lich's Mastery.
Yeah,
dude, Lich's Mastery, man. First of all, Godless Shrine. Like, how about Kaya's Wrath with Lich's Mastery? I know that's right? I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, certainly a Lich's Mastery deck might want to have Kaya's Wrath, but I don't know about getting paid off with the Kaya's Wrath and the Lich's Mastery deck. I mean, do you think you're going to have some fuel in play at a high level of likelihood and then be able to cast it in that order?
It's possible. Like, so like, for instance, first of all, I'm going to have some of these 3/4s, right? Like, that's a start.
Yeah, being Bellhaunt, Lich's Mastery, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Now, another option, it seems to me that there might be some, and I don't know what all creatures you put along with this yet, but there might be something to the engine of Revival Revenge. So your Revival Revenge is that hybrid split card. Normally, we'd talk about the hybrid part first, but here, the thing you got to keep in mind is that Revenge, the big part, is 4 white black sorcery, double your life total. Target opponent loses half their life rounded up. So if you just play, if you play Revenge after Lich's Mastery, you are drawing so many cards. That's like just boom, boom, right? And you're like, well, that's 2 6s, so that is kind of asking a lot, and I agree. But if you've got the ability to cycle it early on, where instead of just being stuck with an extra 6 in your hand, you could just play it as a totally normal card. In this case, Revival, which is Orzhov, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So for 2 mana, you can get back a creature that costs 3 or less. It's got that unearth action going. And like, if your deck actually just has enough creatures that cost 3 or less, this is like a normal card, I think this becomes like a really exciting option.
Oh, I mean, like the Revenge part seems outrageous if you've already got Lich's Mastery in play. And I think it has some decent play anyway, right? Like,
just make them lose 10.
I mean, doubling anything that could be a lot, right? I mean, sometimes it's 2 life, right? But sometimes it's 20 life.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot.
I mean, I could totally imagine just going, all right, turn 4, 40, turn 5, 80, right? Like, that's entirely plausible, right?
Yeah, I mean, that you're going to win even more then, but that is possible. The thing I wonder is what creatures that cost 3 or less can we get back?
Nice.
You know, like I'm thinking if you're going to play a Lich's Mastery combo deck or whatever, you're going to want cards. I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe you just want Knights and stuff that's boring. But like, you know, for instance, if you play any of the different guys that gain life, you know, I mean, you could play Burglar Rat. You could play any of the life gain, like, you know, 3/2 when it comes into play, gain 4 life, or basically any of the guys that when you play it you gain 3 life or whatever,
or like some kind of an advantage, right? Like, even if it's an Explorer, you think?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it would work great with Jade. You know, if you're playing green, it works great with that kind of stuff.
Because if you're playing Revival, I think that a big part of your game is going to want to be like, play a guy, whatever the guy is, gain a small advantage, get a 1-for-1 trade, like a 1-for-1 trade. Now I'm already ahead because I already got an advantage. Play Revival, compound my advantage. If that compounding the advantage means I'm drawing lands that are going to get me to 5 and 6, then this is just what I want to do, right? Like that's what it seems like to me.
Forbidden Spirit. That's a reasonable one. Although you probably just want to gain life on the way in. It's kind of a low to the ground, low power, but might be positioned well. It's almost like it's a very Floresian sort of edge, this next card that I'm about to speak to. I wonder if you think that there might be room in the metagame for Orzhov Enforcer. 1 and a black for a 1/2 Death Touch with Afterlife 1. So think this one through. You get a 1/2 Death Touch, and if it dies, you get an Afterlife 1.
Okay, so first of all, this guy's pretty good because you just play him and he just stops anything and everything, right? Like, doesn't matter how big their Gigantosaurus is, he's going to kill it, right? That's a pretty good card, I think. If you want to invoke the Floresian adjective, I'd block with this, and then you just get like the Afterlife is fine. I'm into it.
This card seems like it might actually be really hard for people to not have to lose a little value to, right? Like, it's going to trade up in mana frequently, and a lot of removal is not going to work well against it.
Yeah,
and it's very reliable at a variety of useful jobs.
Like, imagine it's just like heads up against Goblin Chain Whirler, right? So you've got Orzhov Enforcer, they go Chain Whirler, it doesn't die, right? You're like, all right, not dead. They swing in, block. It's like, all right, I've got Death Touch, and they're like, I have First Strike. So like, all right, it doesn't kill it, but then it dies, but then it doesn't die really because of the Afterlife 1. Then it gets another block in. Like, that was like a pretty good job.
I don't think you're going to aim to try to fight to chump block with this thing. The vast majority, the real value is coming from just how much this is trading with real game pieces, profitably.
Oh yeah, he's like messing with dinosaurs or something big,
right? Or he's messing with 2-drops. What 2-drops are rumbling with this guy?
I mean, he certainly trades with most of the 2-drops, right? If they don't have First Strike, then they're probably dead. And then the First Strike, but
the ability for this one to be such a reliable turn 2 play for buying yourself some time while still being a threat against creature-light control decks. And then it's also a creature that costs 3 or less that you can get back with Revival Revenge.
Yeah, I think that the ability to compound a little grinding on that it's very Orzhovian.
So what do you think? You into it?
I think it's probably it'd be a pretty decent role player. I'm not super excited to game with it main deck. In my mental space right now, I'm trying to think about growth spiral decks and whether or not red decks are still viable. That's my first go-to. But I'll probably end up on Orzhov. I always end up on Orzhov when Orzhov is available. Raphael Levy once asked me if I always played Orzhov. I played him in like consecutive big events. I was always had Orzhov.
Well, do you?
No, I don't. I like all different strategies. I like tap out blue. I like red aggro. But I think in my soul I'm probably an Orzhov mage, even though I've always claimed to be a Dimir mage. I'm probably an Orzhov mage.
Dimir mages don't claim to be Dimir mages. Come on, man.
I mean, I claim to you because there's no other person to claim it to, because Dimir isn't a thing. So to the public, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm all about Boros, but I'm probably all about Orzhov.
You're a complex man.
That's an Orzhov thing to do, though. We're like, I'm Boros.
So let's say you're playing green-white tokens. How do you feel about Ceruli Caretaker? Green for a 0/3 defender that has tap an untapped creature you control to add 1 mana of any color.
Well,
so you get yourself a Springleaf Drum.
Is that good with Amara?
Yeah, Amara? It works with Amara.
I'm in.
It works. The only problem is it doesn't have haste like Springleaf Drum does, you know?
Yeah, but like...
But if you have two of these, they make a mana instead of like two Springleaf Drums.
But its size is also annoying for people, right? For relative to its casting cost. Like, 0-3 for G, I'm kind of into it.
You're just in for Wall of Wood.
It's not just
you had me at Wall of Wood.
It also has this other ability that, like, you're just like G into GW, you know? I'm making... What am I actually making on turn 2, even if I have the Amara? I don't know. It's not that exciting, I guess.
No. I'm just saying that in terms... I don't think it's about the turn 2. I think it's about the turn 3.
I could cast another Ceruli Caretaker.
No, I just mean that, like, on turn 3, it functions as a one-cost elf. I mean, that's true on turn 2 also. If you just play turn 1 this, turn 2 Amara, and then you can immediately tap it and play another one-cost card, you know?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But, I mean, what is that one-cost card going to be? Another Ceruli Caretaker, a Llanowar Elf, maybe a Legion's Landing? I guess there's a lot of good cards you can play.
Yeah, there's some good cards. You have Flower Flourish, anything. You're just making some mana.
Man. All right. In for Flower Flourish. In 100% for Flower Flourish.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't know if I'm really that into it for green-white tokens. Right? Would you want this on turn 1 over their available turn 1 plays of Flower Flourish, Legion's Landing, and End? That's all they play on turn 1, right?
It makes you want to play a lot more ones, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they don't have that many by choice right now. It's really good with Amara. So that's really exciting. But the ability to tap an untapped creature for additional mana is less exciting in a deck that already has so many cards that turn non-mana creatures into proxy mana, right? Their mechanics just work that way, like with Conclave Tribunal or March of the Multitudes.
Sure. It's a different direction, but what do you think of Essence Capture? This is the new Essence Scatter that's blue, instant, counter target creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on up to one target creature you control. So if you can afford the blue, you can get a +1/+1 counter on your Silvergill Adapter or whatever.
The mono blue tempo deck sometimes plays Essence Scatter. At least, you know, it has availability for it. So I think that might be reasonable here. The Drake's deck also sometimes plays Essence Scatter, like one in the sideboard or two in the sideboard. I can see those as options, but most of the decks that actually want an Essence Scatter wouldn't. I mean, they'd gain very little benefit from this versus having like a huge amount of downside, right? Like the popular Essence Scatter decks in Standard have cards like Sacred Foundry in them, and so a second blue, while not entirely prohibitive, is not attractive for them for this upside. I totally think that the mono blue tempo deck could be like, all right, yeah, I'm in for a few. Give me some Girl Scout cookies, you know. But like, they're not crazy for it. You know, they've got so many good counter spells. The +1/+1 it's all right. But you know, that's not really what they've ever been about.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be playing like something like the mono blue tempo deck to really even be interested in potentially subscribing to this newsletter.
But actually, I'm going to talk myself out of this. The mono blue tempo deck's worst matchup is red aggro, so I think like just getting this off and then getting a little bit of extra value so that they might potentially pull a Djinn out of removal range, for example, or get a guy big enough so they're like, you know, if you get a guy to base 3, right, instead of just base 2, maybe you're a little bit braver to put your Curious Obsession on them the next turn because they can't shock it now. They have to have Lightning Strike. Like that might matter.
Yeah, but like we're still just talking about the +1/+1 counter that you're getting for free.
Yeah, but
like if you were going to play with Essence Scatter, then you might as well play this if all your mana make blue.
Yeah, that's extra silence, right?
I mean, even if your deck is just like all blue mana, then I don't care if your only creatures are, 7 drops. You might as well play this if all your mana's blue.
I'm just saying most of the current buyers of Essence Scatters are not mono blue, right? I'm not even sure the Drakes would rather have this. Like Drakes have Dragon Skull Summits. They're like can probably cast this. And
I don't know about Dragon Skull Summit.
Drake's
Dragon Skull Summit's that's pretty intense.
Drake's have Dragon Skull Summit. It helps cast Discovery Dispersal on turn 1 when they don't have an island.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's happened.
Dude, what do you think of Shimmer of Possibility? 1 and a blue sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put one of them in your hand and the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. Don't shuffle your deck. So it's just Impulse as a sorcery.
I think that it's probably going to be okay in decks that need some serious digging. I don't see this as being a format snapping card. Like, I think I'd rather have Radical Idea than this in Standard.
Don't you want to go use this to find your Wilderness Reclamation?
Oh, so if you've got like just serious specialty cards, yeah, maybe. You know what? I think
like all you want to do is go find your busted card. You know.
Okay. So you play this next to Opt, right? And then you don't play just like casual advantage cards like the. I mean, you would still have to play, big card drawing, right?
I mean, you have to play stuff like Chemist's Insight and stuff.
Yeah,
I just think you want to. You need your payoff. You need the big expensive ones to be instants so that they work with Wilderness Reclamation. But you don't need the cheap ones to be instants.
So this is
the first half of your mana you get on your own turn.
This is the deepest draw, right, that we have for this amount of mana. Then, all right,
sort of. I mean,
Reclamation. I'm in. I'm in now.
Yeah. I specifically want to try it there, and there's so many other options. It might not be the thing that ends up panning out, but I think it's for sure worth a look. So what do you think of Bethnic Biomancer as a Merfolk wizard? Blue for a 1/1. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Bethnic Biomancer, draw a card, then discard a card. And it has 1 and a blue, adapt 1, where if it has no +1/+1 counters on it, you can put a +1/+1 counter on it. So if nothing else, you can have your 1/1 Merfolk wizard at your leisure at instant speed. You can pay 2 mana to give it a +1/+1 counter and then loot. That seems really good, right?
I think this is better than some of the one casting cost options that we see Merfolk decks playing in other formats, right? Like, I think I'd rather have this than the guy who gets bigger when you shuffle.
Yeah, I mean, this card seems, well, I don't know. I guess it would depend on how much people are shuffling, but in general, I think in Standard, if nothing else, this guy being a Merfolk is valuable for the Merfolk deck. This guy being a wizard is great with getting to play Wizard's Retort. And then this is just a efficient body.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm totally fine with just having the option of gaining, like, first of all, like, is he okay on his face? Yes, because like you said, he's a wizard and a Merfolk, so he might have some other benefits. You just play him on turn 1, kind of get the clock ticking, and that you have an option for a valuable thing to do later at some point with 2 free mana. And the looting thing that's cool. It's a cool thing to do.
Yeah, this card looks pretty good to me. I don't know. I mean, who knows how good Merfolk wizards are, but this guy seems like right up their alley of what they're looking for. I mean, there's a lot to like about this guy if Merfolk Wizards is somehow competitive with Wilderness Reclamation.
All right, so I was thinking
to
contrast this guy with a different one casting cost blue adapt creature. Maybe maybe to challenge the
Terramander.
But yeah, Terramander. So that's
okay.
Only okay. So he's you for a 1/1 flying, which on its face is better before you do anything else. And then he's got 7 U, so 8 total, adapt 4. But the ability costs 1 less to activate for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. Like, he could be adapting to 5/5 for all of 1 mana in the mid game.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Like, I think this card in if you were to play
this card looks great.
Just tons of instants. He's seems like he'd get along really well with Drakes, right? They're all friends, and he gets the clock going faster. And just all of a sudden, you're just like I think that he's exciting because you can play him on turn 1 and just kind of get it going, and maybe sit behind a counterspell or a dive down or something while you just kind of build your mana base. But you can also just play him on turn 6 or turn 8. And you're like, all right, let's play this guy, go. He resolves, obviously, because you have like 6 open mana, and then your opponent says go, and you're like, all right, 5/5. And you're like, oh boy, that's a problem. 5/5 flying.
Well, with both of these 1-drop threats, we should end on a 1-cost removal spell that I can't help but think is flying under the radar for a lot of people, and that's Sky Tether. White aura, enchant creature has defender and loses flying. Isn't this just like a way better deal for 1 mana than you normally get?
I think, like, depending on the type of deck you are, this card is probably perfect. Like, a blue-white control deck would love this card. You know, a deck that, like, has attackers doesn't necessarily get anything out of playing this card.
Well, they do if their attackers are flyers.
All right, fair enough.
Right, like, don't you get to just knock all their flyers? And as long as you're just winning with stuff like, you know, whether it's Lyra Dawnbringer or Angel of Grace or Wrath Capuchin or whatever, as long as your threats are all flyers, even Dovin Band tokens, as long as your threats are all flyers, this card's as real as the streets. Oh, this is just like this is like a. I mean, isn't this like a lot like a? I mean, any of those 2-cost enchantments that strangle the opponent's creature. Right? Like,
I mean, this card's superpower is costing white for sure, right?
Yeah, and if this card costs 2, whatever, right? But for 1 mana, this is most of a good 2-cost removal spell, but for only 1 mana.
Yeah, I think it's probably pretty attractive to pull a Drake out of the sky, right? As long as it can't use that giant power on defense, it's all good.
Yeah, so I think this card's going to have some very real purpose, both as a main deck card in some spots and as a sideboard option for people. Like, you know how people always want to play with like Shock or Deadweight or some kind of removal spell on their sideboard to help them against the fast aggro decks?
Oh yeah.
Well, Sky Tether is the white Shock or Deadweight.
Oh, I like it. It's probably better than Shock or Deadweight in some of the decks that play it, like red-white control that already has like Star of Extinction or something. Probably gets a lot more out of playing this card than even playing Shivan. What's the one with kicker?
Shivan Fire.
Yeah, it's probably just get more. Like, it's like, who cares if they have a creature because I'm going to star anyway later. It's just not getting attacked is the thing that matters to me.
Yep.
So
I think this card looks good.
Going into the pre-release this weekend, what is the most exciting card we have talked about that none of us have played yet in Paper Magic for Ravnica Allegiance?
Wilderness Reclamation?
Not close. I think it's not.
I don't know,
close.
Dude, Wilderness Reclamation seems so stupid to me. All right, let's go break it, man.
All right.
Let's talk to you next week. Hopefully, if you could have it broken in triplicate, that would be great.
Oh, I'll have a bow on it for the Pro Tour. Don't worry about that. All right.
Love it.
Bye, man.
Bye.
In life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends,